What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the DGD Podcast. I'm Robert Reynolds. Special guest tonight, Coach Hayes. How you doing, Coach?
Doing great, Roberts. Glad to be on with you tonight. Looking forward to talking all things.
Absolutely. First, can't start the show off without a happy Valentine's Day to everybody, by the way. To all those guys and gals out there, happy Valentine's Day. The show, folks, brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. Guys, birthday gifts, anything like that, you got all the gear you want. Hoodies, drinkware, all of it's licensed. Polos, like the shirt I'm wearing right now, licensed. Get it at Alumni Hall. DGDpodcast.com/Alumni Hall. Use our website. 8% goes to the Classic City Collective. Thanks, Alumni Hall. We got a lot to cover, Coach.
Yes, we do.
Super Bowl just wrapped up, NFL season. There were a lot of dogs that just got Super Bowl rings.
Yes, sir.
Now, the question is, how does that translate to success at UGA? Does that NFL success translate to success in recruiting, things like that? So we're going to cover that. Kamari Lassiter made some waves, giving back to the school. We're going to talk about that. And the combine invites are out, and there are some names that might surprise you that did not get an invite. So we're going to talk about that. First things first, Coach.
Yes, sir.
It's been a while. How have you been, sir?
I've been doing good, man. Just trying to transition in the off season because, like I said, the main thing as a coach, I used to, when season was over with, was be able to go attend clinics. I would go to 2 or 3 clinics all over the state, even out of state, to just learn new habits, and to learn new things, new trends, to try to applicate back to what we were doing for the next year. Just something that was ahead of the curve. And being out of the coaching ring now, what I've been doing is having the opportunity to work with a lot of new softwares and a lot of new coaching clinic software that I'm getting in, and being able to evaluate how teams are adjusting, because the passing game has become so heavy out of the spread, out of the gun. Even though teams are still trying to run it, they're trying to figure out ways to defend it without necessarily bringing a run heavy defense type in the box now anymore. They're having to play a lot of people that are hybrids and adjusting to it. So what's really been cool so far is being able to focus on the recruits this season that are coming in, the 2025 group, and who can be some quick contributors. Also some 2026 guys that we're looking at as well that are beginning to commit, and just kids that we've retained that were freshmen last year. They're going to be stepping up into their sophomore or their redshirt freshman year, and seeing how they can contribute to the team, because there's a lot of spots to fill this year.
Absolutely. And I want to take that and I want to kind of spin it, right? I think that's very important for what we're talking about tonight. And the NFL success. Have we seen in recruiting, right, with 2025 class, things like that, and looking forward to 2026, the success for Georgia, former Georgia players, right? Nolan Smith obviously comes to mind. Jalen Carter, all the dogs on the Eagles, right? You got all 6 of them. But even outside of the Eagles, and in the Super Bowl, you still got guys like Kamari Lassiter, Tyke Smith playing well. You still got James Cook looking to be one of the better running backs in the AFC. A lot of players, right? Trayvon, all the guys on the all around the NFL. Are you seeing any kind of correlation into success in the NFL translating to benefiting in recruiting? I know NIL is a big deal now, but I still get this feeling that the NFL success and the development there and winning the rings, that's got to help, I would assume. What are your thoughts?
Without a doubt, my man. You look at Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey this year too, offensively, what they've done with the Raiders and the Chargers respectively as well.
1,000-yard receivers, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, we expected it. We knew it from being Georgia fans, but obviously we had to convince a lot of people. I can still think of the solitude those Raider fans were feeling. I wish I had the cut up for that, for when they heard that Brock Bowers was coming to the Raiders, and they're like so disappointed as they're listening to that traffic.
They were not happy.
They were not happy. Yeah, it's changed up now. But to answer your question, I would say in the first quarter of Kirby Smart's tenure, the biggest key and connection was as we were beginning to build our recruiting classes and start looking at top 3 recruiting classes in year 3, year 4, especially after a second year unprecedented run to the national championship game that we still, 2nd and 26 will always live in infamy as a Georgia fan. But, I look at that and I think that was the beginning of where I saw that if we were going to get to the next level, we needed to start seeing more dogs going to the NFL. We needed to start seeing more dogs being drafted. And I really do think as we made it finally into the 2021 year, in the 2022 year, and having the unbelievable amount of talent that we had defensively, as well as the offensive, cogs that were in there as well. I think that's finally what put us on the map to start seeing these kids who we're recruiting can see, you know what, not only do you come to Georgia and get put in front of millions of people weekly to interface with, we are going to develop you to get you ready for the league. And you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard it as well as I have. You see so many NFL coaches now. I think that disconnect of what it used to be where NFL coaches felt like, you know what, we don't do what you do in the college levels. We're kind of the NFL. We don't need what you're doing. We want your kids, but we're going to do what we want to with them. And then you're finally seeing some general managers and some, the executives up in the office, they're beginning to humble themselves a little bit and say, you know what, if they did what they did and how they presented, just like our defense did from the 2021 year, and even the 2022 year, that if they're going to have that kind of success at the college level being developed by high-end coaches who know what they're doing, why in the hell would we not want to bring them on staff with us as well and have them, developed at the NFL level too? And that obviously is shown and reflected what we saw in the Eagles this year. You can even look at Green Bay. Green Bay has 6 Bulldogs on. It's
Stokes, Bullard, Quay, Devontae.
Yeah, you've got Devontae. I think it's Quay, Stokes, Trey Hill. That's another one.
That's it. Okay.
Trey Hill and John Fitzpatrick is another one as well.
Gotcha.
But you got those 6 on there as well, and 4 of those 6, were heavily contributors into that defense too. I mean, you take those 6 guys and you take the 6 from the Eagles, man, and that's a solid group of youngins. But yeah, to answer your question, I think finally that has connected with these recruits, the 2024 recruits, the 25 recruits, and soon to be 26 recruits. They are seeing what Georgia is putting together, the puzzle pieces that Coach Smart has, it was just a matter of time before it happened. So, I mean, I'm glad to see those things happening. And yes, I do believe that putting kids, inviting people to the combine, having more drafts every year, going to the NFL, 10 plus, and of course the unprecedented amount of 15 that went that one year. That's really
it was 22, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 22.
Exactly. No, it was a 21. It was a 21, I think.
Yeah, the 21 group. Yeah, the 21 group. Yeah. But anyhow, to see those things happen, and we're going to continue. I think that's what's nice. I don't think it's kind of this one-hit wonder mentality. I think we're going to have a lot of drafts this year as well. They're going to have a lot of people.
I do too. It might not be as top heavy as the 21.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think that there's a good chance. And obviously I think how they do at the combine is going to matter, right? I think a lot of those guys are going to have to perform well at the combine to really to solidify where we think they can go.
Exactly.
But just the fact that you get all these invites, and we'll talk about this later, but 14 guys got invited. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. That's a lot. And you talked about it, right? There's a lot of turnover for young guys. And I think that's where – I'm looking at the NFL model, and I'm not a true NFL guy by default. I'm just not. But when you turn on the news and you listen to ESPN, and all you hear is Georgia and Eagles GM, like that call that he made with Nolan Smith. I think that went around, made its way around. It's really just Georgia propaganda to really drives things home. And
yes, it does.
What you see on the field is one thing, but when you start to hear, Georgia, and you see Nolan Smith and you see Nakobe Dean, even if he got hurt, you start to look at that, and Jordan Davis, right? Like those guys were playing at a high level and brought a level of leadership and the culture from Georgia to the NFL, infused it into the organization, and now they're Super Bowl champions.
Yes.
And I think I'm not saying it's 100% tied to that, but I think it's a heavy influence because I think Jalen Hurts had mentioned that about the Georgia culture. And
He
when
did.
you start to listen to those guys, it makes me wonder just how many guys are paying attention, recruits, what I mean, to these NFL guys, because I genuinely think it's recruiting without recruiting.
Yes, it is. And what's nice now is it's almost to the point where it's you hear people making passive income. It's almost passive recruiting now that's happening. Basically people are recruiting for Coach Smart and staff now and for that institution just because of what we're seeing reflectively going into the NFL, especially over the last 3 years. I think about, a lot of people don't realize. I'm glad you brought up that Jalen Hurts comment, because when he was in the pregame pressers talking to the media, he mentioned Nakobe Dean by name. That means something to me, because when I'm thinking about that, he wouldn't have said his name out loud if he wasn't some kind of if he wasn't impressing upon
it's
the
very calculated. It felt like.
Yes, very much so. And it's good. It's great to hear. These guys, these kids are listening to these gentlemen who are going up there and speaking, and they're hearing them talk about guys that went to the University of Georgia, was developed out of Mississippi as a 5-star, came up and just did some unprecedented things at the linebacker level. And now here he is with the Philadelphia Eagles and being mentioned as that staple on the defensive side of the ball, even as you said, being hurt, but able to, be something in the locker room that's just more than just the player, being someone who's, that character that we talk about. Because I'm going to tell you, I know I'm probably old school with this, but to me, you're never going to get away. You can have plenty of athletes out there, those 5-star talent kids that are just rich with talent, like it just oozes off of their body. But to me, you've got to have character that goes with that, because to me, the integrity of someone has to maintain that. And I think that's what you see when you listen to Nolan Smith talk, when you listen to Nakobe Dean talk, when you listen to Jordan Davis talk. Those things just, to me, permeate when you hear them talking in there with the interviews that they go through prior to the Super Bowl as well.
Don't really see a lot of talking from Jalen Carter outside of smack talk, but he lets his play do the talk. I think everybody knows by that point.
Well, Jalen's just one of those. He's not going to lead by the way he talks. I think he's just, you're right. I think he's going to go out there and just play smash mouth football because that's what he knows.
Yeah, I mean, it works. I mean, not everybody, and that's, I think you understand this too. And not everybody is built to be a true leader, right? Like, not everybody's built to be a leader, and that's okay. But I think when I look back on 2021, there was so much leadership, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
You had somebody there at each level of the defense. That's huge. You don't really see that. And honestly, I don't think we see that again due to the state of college football and how things are coming along.
Unfortunately,
but even if you want to take away the Eagles, right? I mean, you had Nakobe a 5-star, Jordan Davis was a 3-star out of high school, right? Jalen Carter was a 5-star, Nolan Smith 5-star. That's cool and all, right? And kids look at that and like, oh, they're a bunch of 5-stars. But like you said earlier, Ladd McConkey, 3-star.
Yep.
Right?
And someone who definitely used the combine to promote himself even more. You think about how he showed out the combine. I mean, all of a sudden, what we knew was known after the combine was over with Ladd.
Yeah. I mean, we had seen things, and it's just like, okay. So when he goes second round, like the combine really helped him get his draft stock up, elevated his draft stock, and it's paying off, right? I think part of it is where he got drafted to, right? I think having a good quarterback there is going to help out, but at the same time, it's not all on that. It's on you too. And you creating separation, things like that. He's doing the same things at Los Angeles that he was doing at Georgia, creating space.
Yes.
It's a whole different ballgame because he's in the NFL doing it.
Exactly. And Harbaugh's not dumb. I mean, he watched him from the Michigan standpoint. Exactly. He's sitting on the other side. He's going, I want this kid. I watched him blow us up too many times. I watched him blow up too many teams too many times. I want this kid on our team. So definitely smart maneuver there, Mr. Harbaugh. Yeah,
no doubt. I will say this though. I think when you look at this recent wave, right, of the 2021 guys, 2022 guys, especially along the defensive line, I think this is solidifying Trey Scott as one of the better defensive line coaches Georgia could have possibly ever had. That's just where I'm at with that.
Well, it's fickle too, because I remember when we first got Coach Scott, there was a lot of people questioning him, very similar to what we're getting with like Dante Williams right now because of our down DB play this year. Also, Coach Searles with offensive line play this year. Trey got a lot of heat as he was moving through there. But all of a sudden, you start getting some Jimmys and Joes in there, and you see what it kind of was a perfect storm for him. He got the 5 stars in, he got the 3 stars that he developed that became, just the staple on the defensive side of the ball. What happened with Jordan, but a very cool role player in Devontae Wyatt being a solid player there as well. Then Trayvon
blew
Walker
up his last year at Georgia.
Exactly,
too,
they all did. That's what I'm saying.
Channing
it was like
Tindall.
that. Channing Tindall at the linebacker level as well, and even Quay Walker. You got to think about it. To me, the way I look at it, someone being a damn good dog is you leave the place better than than you found it. And it's the same thing on the football field. I think a lot of those guys who were very good character kids that were basically great athletes were basically raising the play of those people around them. You saw what happened in the Alabama game when, Nakobe jumped Channel's ass, and then all of a sudden Channel next play makes the
next play creates a sack before a field goal. Yeah,
exactly. So, those things kind of happen. And I think Jordan Davis benefited from having great play around him with Devontae Wyatt, with Jalen Carter, and with Trayvon Walker. I mean, think about those guys that were on the line that complemented each other so well. And of course, that all reflects back to what Coach Scott's doing. And I think that's the reason why, you've seen him sort of marinate now and mature in what he's doing. So that's good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Even then, though, like now that you've got all these guys getting drafted, right? Before that, it was a while since Georgia really had somebody drafted as a D lineman.
Yes.
And so to see that drought turn into just an influx of D line guys.
Yes.
That's a big recruiting pitch, and obviously that's gonna make Trey Scott a more sought after target for coaching.
I agree.
Positions, things like that too.
And he's added to it now. He's got a bunch of dudes there right now as well. I mean,
I was about to say you bring in the best D lineman in America in the 25 class. That's Elijah Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Coach Uzo bringing in Isaiah Gibson, number 1 edge.
Yep.
So the front 7, I think, looking ahead to 2025, I think it's seeing these guys that come in, and I think they're, to me, like Elijah Griffin could have played NIL route. And that while I'm not going to say that, you'd be crazy to say that wasn't a part. I don't think it was everything. I think he loves what Georgia had to offer.
Yes.
But Georgia was also competitive NIL and all those things. But I think you could take that NFL success and play that in there, because if you're the best player, you know how easy it is to go to Texas, or easier to go to Miami and all these other places where NIL could be a major factor.
Yeah.
But you don't see NFL guys and scouts taking those guys early.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at guys like Isaiah Gibson and Elijah Griffin, you really have to take a look at the NFL track record. And that's why I think it's success you're seeing in the NFL from Georgia players is transferring over. Now, there's certain positions I feel like we should be doing better at. Recruiting wise, but we're not. Like when you look back at 2021, the secondary, I feel like we could be doing better there. I mean, obviously, I think Ellis Robinson and DeMelo Jones this year are bound to have bigger roles.
Without a doubt.
But you see Dalen Everett finally coming on strong.
Yep.
And that was something that I think we were cautiously skeptical about, honestly. I think we were real skeptical about that until last year when he really solidified things, and you needed that, honestly.
Without a doubt. I think bottom line is when you look at the totality of what Kirby's trying to do with these recruiting classes and getting them to NFL is he's trying to grow them up quick, because you're talking to 18-year-old kids with parents who are definitely high on the fact of wanting to see their kid be successful and building off that success. But, they have to sit them down and talk to them. It's sort of like when you and your wife get married, you think about it. What it would have been so nice to go into financial counseling and be able to know how I'm going to, acclimate and basically take all these things and itemize them and make sure I'm in the right place at the right time across the board, across the spectrum. I think when it comes down to it, there may be a situation where the NIL money is maybe not dropping the biggest bag over the top, but yet we're saying, listen, if you come to Georgia, we are going to do more than just drop the bag. You're going to get paid for what you do and what you produce on the field, because it comes down to it. These kids have got to start producing almost like they are signed under a contract, which I eventually think that's what it's going to go to. And if they don't produce, they don't get the money. but we're also going to take you through a heavy nutrition system. We're going to teach you how to use your money correctly. We're going to teach you how to invest. We're going to teach you how to be in a good spot when you get the chance to finally either go to the NFL draft as a junior, or whether you decide to wait your senior year and it's time's up and you're being taken to go to the NFL draft. There's just, to me, it's just spread across the board. There's a bigger spectrum. There's a bigger game plan. And I think the kids who see that are the ones that want to be at the University of Georgia. And I'm not saying the ones that jump on a bag and, they're just taking it for the money. But to me, eventually that money play is going to be, I can throw the biggest bag at you. But when it comes down to it, if you don't produce, then all I've done is thrown a bag in somebody's face that's not, returning on the investment that I'm giving you. What we're trying to do is we're investing in the whole player. And the kids to me that want to be at Georgia are the ones who are buying into that total game plan.
I agree. Another thing, though, you talk about throwing the bag at them. I'll tell you right now, Kirby's motto has been NFL over NIL, right?
Yep, without a doubt.
A lot. Keep in mind, I want to explain this. The reason why I say that's important is because you've heard stories about them having that rolling count of how much money on contracts that Georgia players have made across the NFL actively. Just wait until these extensions come out for all these Eagles players.
Without a doubt.
I mean, show me that I'm wrong. I'll listen if I'm wrong, but they're on their own rookie contracts right now. All of them.
I would hope, too, that they show some kind of signing bonus for these kids, too, who wait. Because today's time, you don't see kids waiting anymore. I know a lot of them that are ready to go. They're ready to go by their junior year, so be it. Go. It's just like Brock Bowers. As much as I hate to see him go, he needed to go. I mean, he was –
without a doubt. We knew he was gone. It was
exactly.
I mean, it's just something you have to understand.
But, if you prep yourself the right way and you put yourself in position to be a round one, day two pick, I'm sure them signing bonuses are also something they could show them and say, listen, this is what you're getting just for being drafted by this team. You haven't had to do the first thing for them and you've got this money. So, I agree with you. There's definitely longevity to what he's showing them in the fact of, hey, the NFL contract, whether you're signing bonus and what you make, and then like you said, with the extensions of going to the playoffs, making a Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl. I mean, how many of these youngins have we seen through the 21, 22, 23 years, even some of the, like you think about Sony Michel, going into the league, winning it with the Patriots. So, it's the same thing. We've seen a lot of Bulldogs winning Super Bowls. And so I definitely think that's that passive recruiting that's going to help these kids realize long-term is good.
McCole with the Chiefs, Malik Aaron with the Chiefs. There's another example. But, I'm sitting there kind of thinking about this. Like you mentioned Brock Bowers, right? Like, you're not going to find another player like Brock Bowers at the tight end position at Georgia. I don't see him getting surpassed. It's going to take a lot.
Yes.
But if you look at it, like what Hartley's done in the development there with all the tight ends and things like that, I think it's translating over, into the 26 class too.
Yes.
You've got 2025, you're looking at, Ethan Barbour and Elias Williams, but then 26, there's a potential. You've already got Lincoln Keys, but you could get Mark Bowman. You could get Caden Prothrow. Like, that's a hefty list of some elite players.
Todd does it by twos, man. I love it. He's got it set up by twos, But you're right. I mean, it's amazing what Coach Hartley's done. I mean, it's the same principle of what we're talking about with Coach Scott. I mean, it just takes time and efforts and being able to evaluate kids the right way and having those guys, because you don't see it as much anymore, for kids to develop and stay in the system and be patient. It's just like a Justin Williams and a Chris Cole who are waiting in the wake of Raylan Wilson and CJ Allen right now. I mean, there's two quality high 5-star linebackers just sitting there ready, chomping at the bits to get some playing time at inside linebacker a little bit. I mean, but that's the thing about it. A lot of these kids, if they don't have the patience, if they're not, they're looking at it from a different perspective. I want that playing time, then they're going to go somewhere else. But I think if they wait it out and realize, hey, CJ and more likely Raylan will be gone next year, and this gives them the opportunity now to step up with some playing time this year, but be the solid starters for next year. We've got to have more of that, the retention of those kids to stay, versus some of these that are jetting out and not providing the necessary depth, because now it's being spread out more, and we're being watered down a little bit because that depth's no longer there. It's going other places to play.
Yeah, I think another thing too, though, when you, like, for instance, if you look at that linebacker room, right, you're stacked with players that are really, really good. What do you think is going to happen on an NFL roster?
Same thing. I mean,
Or you just going to duck and run?
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Exactly.
understand the logic of play. You have to play to get to the league. I get that. But at the same time, we saw backups wait their turn. A lot of positions.
Exactly.
Come
Jalen
in.
Carter, he did it. I mean,
Jalen Carter in 2021, he was the best defensive lineman, and he didn't even start.
nope. He was catching fullback flood routes out of the backfield in the goal line inside the 5. I remember him doing that, and he was a spot play guy, but he did not start.
Well, then, I mean, you had to be fair, and you had Trayvon as a freshman, Trayvon Walker running down a linebacker or running back off a wheel route.
Exactly.
300 pounds kickoff run on. You know what I'm saying?
He was a man among boys right there.
Well, I mean, he's first overall pick too. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's just I don't know, and kind of another one, and kind of a good transition point. Like, look at Kamari Lassiter.
Yep.
Kamari Lassiter comes into Houston and just immediately shuts shit down.
Yep.
Immediately, him and Stingley, one of the better duos in NFL, maybe.
Yep. And you think
as a corner duo.
Don't you think, though, he did very similar to what Ladd did offensively? Didn't he show out at the combine too? I think that's what helped his draft stock. You think about that? Mm-hmm.
But I think with all these guys that we've talked about, right? The 2021, 2022 teams are really setting the bar moving forward in the NFL eyes, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That means they're gonna have more eyes on Georgia, because a lot, and I think you get this too. Like, when you look at NFL owners, if they see a successful model, they're gonna copy that shit.
Yep.
They're going to do it. Why do you think there's a little bit of a lag, but they copy, successful college offenses and defenses. Think about that.
Yep.
So if the method for winning was drafting Georgia players, and like I said, we heard all this talk, you can't sit here and tell me that NFL owners are paying attention and GMs are paying attention to that, because they watch that defense. Listen, in the Super Bowl itself, Jordan Davis gets a sack. But keep in mind, throughout the playoffs, Nolan Smith set a record for in playoffs in sacks.
Yep.
Throughout the playoffs.
Yep. It was amazing the compliments that they had with one another being out there.
Yeah. So it's just like you're seeing that right there. Now, defensively, I want to see that transfer to offense, right?
Yes.
I do. But I think you look at guys like James Cook, that might be a situation. Kind of things that might transfer over, right? This NFL draft process, right?
Right.
Let's do this. So, talked about Kamari Lassiter. We'll quickly talk about what he did. He made some news, he made a gift to the UGAA. I want to say it was $4,000. Which, listen, it doesn't sound like much considering he's an NFL player. So please don't take that the wrong way. I think part of it was a marketing thing because it was a number 4. But the fact that he gives back just shows you what it's about. And, and I think you see a lot of this too. Like he gave money back, right? And like I said, it doesn't sound like much, but anything is better than nothing.
Yes.
He didn't have to do that.
Nope.
Didn't have to at all.
But he did. It goes to show how the University of Georgia and the institution was impressionable upon Kamari Lassiter. You're talking about someone who came from, if I'm not mistaken, Kamari was not a defensive back coming in, correct? Was he not a running back converted to DB? I may be wrong.
I think it may have been.
Out of where it was at. But, here he is. He pays his dues. He comes in, he works his tail off, converts over from one side to the other. I'm almost positive he might be one of those that got converted from the offensive side of the ball.
It. I might be wrong, but it sounds familiar.
But anyhow, works his way up in the ranks, starts showing out on the defensive side of the ball, starts getting noticed, all of a sudden starts to get some playing time, and then he goes in and he performs, bang, bang, goes to the NFL Combine. He shows out there, raises his draft stock. Now he gets, basically taken for a steal with the Texans, and goes, like you said, goes out there and just shuts people out. Him and Stingley playing the daggum corners out there and just stapling people. So, that's so nice to see that he comes back, because to me that shows you the character of the kid and how much they believe in him. I remember Kirby talking in the post-game conference after them demolishing Florida State and talking about Kamari coming back to want to play in the bowl game when he didn't have to. In fact, Coach Smart advocated for him to go ahead and start getting ready for the draft, and he said, "No, Coach, I want to play." That just goes to show his character and what he is, and to me is a massive just a positive vibe that you want to see for the University of Georgia and for the program itself. Another recruiting ploy that helps that platform as well too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to see these guys come back and give back to the school, right? Like I said, they don't have to. Right? There's lots of players that don't really do that. Like they'll come back, but they don't have to give financially, and I think that's something that shouldn't go, regardless of the amount, should not go unnoticed. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I think that's just another part of that group and what Kirby's built from a culture, man. Like it's more. I feel like sometimes the way it's been shown to me is that it's more than just a team. Like they're legitimately building that kind of that brotherhood type bond, if that makes sense.
It's a fraternity, man. It's a family. And to me, when you're a coach, you want that in the house. And that's something I've heard him mention more than once about when you've got team members and your senior captains or just captains in general that are having to lead, you're a great football program. If coaches have to lead, you can be a good football program. But when your players lead, you're a great program. When you see that kind of brotherhood and you have more people connected in that way, you play better together because you believe in the guy you're lined up shoulder to shoulder with. So, those things to me have sort of been inbred with what Coach Smart's brought in, and that's why we love him. But, the thing is his ties are the fact of him being an alumnus of the school. He bleeds red and black. I mean, for him to be back there, he is the perfect ideal fit for what Georgia needed and what they continue to need, as long as he don't get burnt out from the transitional changes that we're seeing in the new economy and the new paradigm that is college football now. But I think over time, Coach Smart is the best fit we have because he brings that brotherhood, that fraternity, that family mentality. And that's why you see people like Kamari Lassiter coming back and saying, you know what, they did so much for me. This is a way that I can give back to them as well. So just kudos to him, man. Just very proud for him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there too. I want to talk about this though. We've talked about these NFL dogs, and now the next wave is approaching. Mm-hmm. And so obviously the first thing happens is combine invites. And so Georgia gets 14 combine invites, and I'm going to read them off to you. And I want to get your thoughts on it. But you got Trevor Etienne, Dominic Lovett, Arian Smith, Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, Xavier Truss, Jared Wilson, Warren Brinson, TID, Nazir Stackhouse, Michael Williams, Smile Munden, Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks. Now, that's not what made the news, if you will.
Nope.
What made the news wasn't who went or got invited, but who didn't. And so there were 3 players that didn't get invited. So you got Ben Urasic, got Chaz Chambliss, and Dan Jackson. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of Georgia fans, kind of myself too, were left to wonder why no Dan Jackson at the very least. I think people made a big deal about Dan Jackson, but you can make the same argument for Chaz.
Yes, without a doubt.
And so it leaves me to wonder, why did they not invite those 2 guys?
I scratch my head. I really don't know. I think they really underestimated both of those guys. Why not give them a chance to come in with their solidarity of what they've done over the last 3 or 4 years? Honestly, to tell you the truth, I look at, Dan Jackson really out-competing Malachi Starks this year at the safety position. Nothing against Malachi. He was definitely more consistent with play this year than Malachi was. I know Malachi was being moved from free down to nickel a lot. He was having to play 2 different positions a lot. It put him sort of, I think, in a crutch. But Dan played very.
Got a lot more exposure too, because
he sure did.
Like we just talked about.
Exactly.
Tyke, Kamari, Javon,
right?
The whole secondary outside of Dalen Everett went to the NFL.
Exactly, without a doubt.
So you got a lot more exposure too.
and that complementary football that we talked about was nice when you got those kind of experience in the secondary, along with a All-American safety that's working his way up the ranks. But when you're back there by yourself as the All-American and you're having to bring in people around you, and there's growth to be done, then that's where you see those problems, those growing pains we saw this year. But I'm really, even after the Reese's Senior Bowl too, I thought that Dan Jackson would be an automatic bid.
I did too. He did a really good. If I'm not mistaken, he had a really good Senior Bowl week of practices and everything too.
He sure did. I mean, voted on by his peers as one of the best safeties, or if the best safety at the camp. I mean, so I sit there and think about those things and wonder, are they just really trying to down on us a little bit with that? It seems like there's always something that's sort of a slap in the face to the program in that regard. I don't understand why they're trying to make a storyline somewhere else. But to me, I think Dan Jackson will be drafted. I've said that since day one. I really do think that there'll be somebody that picks him up. Him not being able to go to the combine and show out a little bit, it's the same principle with Chaz. I think Chaz is probably, his stats and what he's going to produce at the combine would probably not be jaw-dropping by any chances, but give the guy a chance for someone who stayed with the program, done his best as he could do, and for him not to be able to go show out his talents and be able to maybe pop some eyes somewhere. But I guess it just comes down to it. They just felt that he wasn't adequate enough to go. I don't know why, but it doesn't make sense to me why we didn't at least have the 15th player go, and that is Dan Jackson. I think he was well deserved of that to go.
You've got a situation where you've got multiple year starter tied for sacks on the team with Jalen Walker at 6.5, and he's not there. Yeah. To be fair, you have Georgia's pro day, and they'll have private workouts. Bet money that you're going to see 32 teams at the draft or at the pro day, right? I would assume you're going to see all 32 teams represented to some degree.
Yes.
But private workouts, I would expect both of them to get private workouts too.
Yes.
And if anything, with Chaz specifically, he is a turn the tape on type of guy.
Yes.
You've seen it from the IQ pre-snap. I think that's I think Georgia's going to miss this. And, a lot of people, I've heard shit on Chaz Chambliss. Listen, I understand why you have the right to be mad and complain. But one of the things people are going to miss is pre-snap identifications.
Yep.
Tendencies, things like this, just watching enough tape. That's, to me, that's preparing like an NFL player.
Yep.
And so it's going to be missed. And I think your impact is going to be known. Now, you've got freaks on the edges.
Yep.
You've got some freaks coming.
Yep.
But I think his experience and his experience and all that is going to play a huge part. But Dan Jackson was an impact player.
Right.
Impact
Without
player.
a doubt. Yeah. When you look at draft grades, and I'm sure what they're going to bring down the specs to me with Chaz is that he's got the size to be an inside linebacker, but not the speed to cover running backs, not the speed to run downhill and do those kind of things. And he's too small to play the edge. A lot of people say he's small. I mean, he's a cut up, very thick kid, but as far as playing the true DN, taking on NFL tackles, he's undersized. So, he's not going to run anybody down. And when he's playing up on the line, which is to me his better suit, honestly, he might have a situation where they think that he's not going to be able to get off blocks, because Nolan Smith by far is smaller than Chaz is, I believe. I think he's a little bit smaller. And Chaz, I just think
shorter. I think Chaz might be a little bit taller.
Yeah, Chaz is a little bit taller, but I just guess they see that he wouldn't be able to do, because that's the problem, is he's sort of mismatched with what he can do. And so that might be the reason why that they're looking down. But I agree with you. When they have the senior pro day and they have the ability to work out in front of some NFL teams that'll be there, as well as, maybe getting some private chances to work out as well, get the opportunity to shine. Dan's going to be one to do that. I don't think he's going to sign as an unrestricted free agent. I hope somebody picks him up, hopefully in the fifth round, sixth round, whatever
mid to late day three
people. That's what I'd love to see, and take a shot on him, because I think he's going to contribute wherever he goes, because he's known nothing. If you talk about eating off the floor, you talking about the humble mentality. If there's someone who's done that and lived that, it's him. And he's shown time and time again that, If you think about it, he was the determining factor to win the Georgia Tech game that we sat there and watched for 8 overtimes to cause that fumble. That was huge. There's just so many things that he did this year. And by far, but to me, he tracks down people from the alley better than any safety I've seen probably in a long time. And it just goes
closing that gap and taking the right angles.
And taking the right.
We saw that in the NFL. I mean, in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yes.
Right? Think about Cooper DeJean running through the gap, closing that space, right?
I think he fits it like Richard LeCount did. Richard LeCount did a good job of that as well.
Yeah,
and Dan does the same thing. He does it without hesitation either, because he knows if he goes up, trying to be under control, he's never going to get to that spot that he needs to get to. And you saw it time and time again for a lot of people who's done some different boards for Dan Jackson and showed some highlights for him. Yeah, for one or two that he might miss every once in a while, and he's had some misses, but heck, at safety, you're going to miss some people. That's the reason why you got good athletes making plays in space, and you got to learn to get better and make a tackle when you're the only one that can do it. But for every one he's missed, there's 8 to 9 where he is just freaking actually spearing somebody, just taking their will away from them. So, I hope they give him a chance eventually.
I do too. I see a comment here. Thomas Barnes asking, who are your top 3 DBs and why? Now, to be fair, I need clarification on this because there's a multitude of different answers depending on what are you asking my top 3 for. Are you just talking about Georgia DBs, or are we talking what specific? But in the meantime, maybe, Coach, this is a good point to do this. Maybe let's talk about our top 3 DBs from Georgia. Let's do that while we find out more clarification. Who would your top 3 DBs? I'm assuming we'll just include the whole secondary here. Who would your top 3 be?
Well, there's obviously reason to bring in new safeties from the portal because of what we lost with KJ Bolden coming back. I really do think we're a little bit heavier in the cornerback position versus the safety position. But to answer your question, I mean, you're looking at Ellis Robinson, you got Dalen Everett, you've got DeMello Jones coming back, you obviously got Daniel Harris, even Andre Evans. I don't know if they're going to put him at the safety.
I would love to see him get some run, Coach. I really would.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot of that going on. So, I mean, you sit there and think to yourself, okay, if Dalen Everett staples a corner position, which is where he's had success and grown and obviously coming back for his final year, I've almost thought to myself, it's all about where the nickel plays into this as well, because Dalen Everett has shown that he can tackle very well too. And I've talked about Dalen Everett being a role player that could possibly move to another position. But then again, I don't know if you take a veteran corner and try to move him inside to a safety or nickel to basically now expose 2 corners that don't have a ton of reps except for, Daniel Harris. It's amazing to me to see that, with listening to Dante Williams talk, that he's speaking very highly on DeMello right now, and obviously Ellis too. And, he should be. They're both highly touted recruits. It's going to be a matter of I think their battle is going to be very similar to what we're going to see at the quarterback position between Pug and Gunner. We just don't know what we're going to know until April gets here and we start seeing them line up and go out for the spring game. I'm sure we'll hear some whispers as we go, but you have to say Daniel Harris, Dalen Everett, an Andre Evans, DeMello Jones, or Ellis Robinson, and you look at that group of rotators for 2 spots. I say that's probably what you're looking at for next year. I don't know any other names right now that to me would fit those categories to show the ability to play.
I'd like to see what Kyron Jones is get more run.
Yeah, Kyron Jones wouldn't be a bad fit either. I didn't think about him as well. But, the problem is that you're always trying to figure out who's that nickel going to be, because the nickel plays such a hybrid position now, because you got to be down in the box to play the run, but you've also got to play that number 2 receiver in the slot and combo with the safety behind you and the corner outside of you to, play different coverages, zone and man. And, you got to me, the hardest position on the field to play is the nickel.
It's star. Yeah, that's star position.
The star position.
I'll tell you this, though. I think so. You've got Joe Nolaguero, and people's been hesitant about him, but I think if you really pay attention to his later end of this season, when he was fully healthy, the star position really shored up. Yep. And I think it's due to him being healthy.
I agree.
Part of me wonders what this is going to look like, and I want to explain it. So you bring in Adrian Maddox, from UAB, and he's a bigger guy. Can strike, ball hawk, but ability to thump too, right? And so I'm looking at this right here, and he's got some experience. He's got playing experience too. Part of me wonders if we see Adrian Maddox move into the star position to
Mm-hmm.
then slide Jonell back to a safety with KJ.
Ooh. That
Because
wouldn't be
honestly,
bad.
I mean, it's not to me, it's not that Aguero has been playing bad. I just think that he fits better as a true safety.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've prided ourselves on is elite safety play across the board. And obviously you want the DBs to be fine too. But at the same time, if you put in Adrian Maddox at star and you put in, safety, you go back to Aguero, KJ, if something happens, I do see a situation where Dalen could possibly go there. I don't think he does, though.
No,
I
don't
feel
either.
like they're going to keep him as an experienced corner.
Yeah.
And that's what you need.
Yep.
But there's part of me that also is concerned. If you do that and say if Daniel Harris is a starter, I think you're going to have to rotate in Ellis and DeMello a lot.
Yes.
But is that enough to keep Ellis here?
Yes. That's the problem with Dalen staying at that corner. That's the reason why I guess I'm trying to think in that regard, because exactly what you brought up there in that sentence is that we're looking at trying to keep Ellis Robinson happy. That's all. And I hate to say it that way, because I think we look at it from a fan standpoint.
He's really, really good.
Yes, he is. But yet, obviously, he's not good enough yet to where they feel like he can get into the pecking order. But, who knows?
Consistently,
I challenged in a pod that I did with John a couple of weeks ago. I challenged Ellis Robinson out loud to say, you know what, if you really want to have the opportunity to be that guy that's going to take that corner position away from a Daniel Harris and supersede a DeMello Jones, who seems to be growing on the radar too, then by God, get out there during the offseason right now. Let's prove it. You've got to prove it from now until April that you're going to be that guy. And it comes down to it. He's either going to be it, or he's going to be a rotator enough to where he feels good with that, or we may see the thing that we don't want to see, which is he doesn't get the playing time he thinks he's supposed to get. He doesn't want to stay and develop for another year. He wants to play, and we possibly see him go to the transfer portal. But I'd hate to see that. And honestly, don't think it will happen. But you have to kind of anticipate those kinds of things, because I don't know the kid's character. I don't know what he's about internally, what's going on inside between the ears. So it just really depends on whether or not he's willing to go out there and compete and take a position away, or whether he's, day one could be the first person to go in with the first tweak of an ankle. So, we'll just see what happens. But those guys that we mentioned, I really feel like will be good fits. But unfortunately, you only have two positions you're filling with 5 to 6 guys that'll be competing for those spots.
Is there a situation, because like, for instance, along the defensive line, just based off of bodies, I don't see us playing hardly any mid fronts. Do we see, because of, if we feel like we have a plethora of DBs that could play, do we see more dime packages? Just I'm kind of revert that to somewhat more of a base and run like a dime with 4-man front.
I doubt very seriously.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
I don't think we'll ever. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever go to a rabbit dime where we'll have just 2 bigs with, 2 outside rushers and playing, basically 6 DBs. I think that's really situational for what you'll get, because honestly, you got to think about it. A lot of these teams want to get you out there thinking, okay, if you're going to be in nickel, they still want to get in 12 personnel. We're going to run the ball. And, you got to have those nickels and those guys coming downhill. I don't really think that'll change to where you're trying to appease another defensive back by having more on the field at times, because that's completely situational. But, I do think that Coach Williams probably has a good problem. But unfortunately, I've been in his situation where you have a lot of talent and you've got to play the kid that's going to be cerebral as well as athletically gifted to play the position. And who gives you the most consistency? Because what we don't see and what's questioned, everybody wants to, basically question. He's a 5-star athlete. He's All-American this, All-American that. But yeah, you're not watching him practice 4 to 5 days a week, every week. You're not seeing him in the weight room. You're not seeing him. Is he developing in the, when we're going over film, when we're film watching as a group, as our individual groups? There's a lot of things that go into the integrity of a complete ball player. And maybe he's not meeting those demands. I do know this, that when Georgia Tech game happened, and I know there was a lot of flack on him, but you saw him and Humphreys walking into the locker room together while everybody else is out there celebrating an 8 overtime victory over Georgia Tech, and they're just walking by the entire group as they're celebrating, and they're just walking with their tails tucked back to the room. We know where Humphreys decided to eventually go to the portal. I don't know about his character. Not sure where that's at. Not sure what he's looking to do. But, it comes down to it. If he does go to the transfer portal, I have to trust Coach Smartin's staff that he went to the portal because we couldn't depend on him to play. And that's unfortunate because we know, obviously, his potential as an athlete. But I've seen
through the roof.
Yeah, I've seen exactly. And I've seen a lot. But you know what's funny, though, Robert? I've seen a ton of good athletes in my lifetime, unfortunately. And I'm not classifying Ellis in this situation, but I've seen a lot of good kids in my lifetime that were great athletes, but they were a turd. And their attitude affected in how they played. And unfortunately, that attitude affected the people around and how they played. And that can cause some rift. And if it does, then a lot of times it's hard to put that kid in. So there's going to a lot of be soul searching going on. Maybe, like I said, I don't want to even anticipate that that's what's going on with Ellis, but he's got a lot of growing up to do this offseason going into his sophomore season and, determining what he wants to do. And it comes down to it. He's got to put forth the effort this offseason from now until April and even into the summer to take one of those positions. If you want it bad enough, you're going to work your butt off to get it.
Yeah, I think that's one of many battles to be watching. I think this time this year, this spring, it's going to be huge because there's so many open spots that are going to see competitions.
Mm-hmm.
So that obviously Ellis' situation, what we just talked about here, is just going to be one of many.
Yes.
So it's going to be extremely eventful this spring, and even after the spring, into the summer.
I agree.
How active is Georgia going to be in the spring portal window?
Yeah.
I think you could look to get an edge because you need the bodies, but that's just me. There's a lot of questions there. Coach, I want to thank you. I want to thank you though for coming on and giving us this insight and whatnot. Kind of leading us into a good part of the year, right? The spring and getting ready for the combine, watching the next wave of the NFL dogs.
Yes,
thanks for coming on. Like pulling the X's and O's with you too. It's always fun.
My pleasure, Robert. I appreciate you having me on. Anytime you need me, just holler at me.
Hey, where can people follow you if they want to follow your work? And I know you do. You're doing some content as well. You want to talk quickly about that too?
Sure. I appreciate you letting me do that. Yeah, my individual places that you can catch me at is at Coach Hayes Huddle, Huddle spelled HUDL. I do individual player breakdowns, recruit breakdowns, X's and O's, just showing you basic schemes and understanding how defenses react to offenses and vice versa. And then as well with John Smith on the Dog Dispatch, we do that together conjointly to just bring you, just any information that we can about those Georgia Bulldogs, and just like what Robert's doing with his show and taking the time to help those understand the game a little bit better. So at Coach Hayes Huddle is my individual channel, and then the Dog Dispatch with John Smith.
Thank you, Coach. By the way, if you like this content, you like this discussion here, if you like what Coach Hayes had to say, I know you don't like what I have to say, I understand. But if you like what Coach Hayes said or had to say, make sure to like this video, subscribe, rate, review it if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Spotify, you're watching this too. But leave us a review there too. Listen, it's free, and it helps us more than you know. But with that being said, we're going to wrap this thing up. It's Valentine's Day. It's waning hours of Valentine's Day. We're going to get off here and go spend some time with the loved ones.
Yes, sir.
With that being said, have a great rest of your morning, evening, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. That's all we got. I'm Robert Reynolds. That's Coach Hayes. We'll catch y'all next time. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.